Hey, what's up everybody? It's Craw, and today we're back with a brand new Terraria playthrough. Bit of a stressful time in my life, so I decided to go all out on an easier challenge this time. We're doing swords only. A challenge where we can really relax, start the game with a host of usable weapons and some of the most powerful in-game items in the game. Oh, and I'm actually using a couple of mods on the 1.4.4 preview, including my own, which I made an entire video on. Go watch it if you're interested in what it does. So, let's get right into it. But before that, did you know that only 9.4% of you are subscribed? Make sure to go hit that button to show you want some more girl boss gaming content coming your way. First thing we do in the world is cut down some trees so we can instantly replace the copper short sword with the much better wooden broadsword. After that, I start making my way to the left side of the world, finding some giant living wood trees where we get an unusable spear out of its wooden chest. Heading further left, we grab some cactus from the desert, and then I make like a cheesy horror movie and get myself piranha'd. After respawning, I craft a full cactus set for that lovely thorns damage and head to the right, finding the corruption as well as a cave entrance. I mine up a nice emerald vein and find the most obvious trap chest of all time. Dismantling the traps and opening the chest, we find a nice pair of Hermes boots. While trying to craft some upgrades, I kept getting bombarded by enemies, so I had to block myself in a small hut, leaving the guy to fend for himself. Poor guy. I make a silver broadsword and an emerald hook for some damage and mobility boost before heading back to the corruption, where I find a whole army of wooden chests that supply me with the climbing claws, a plant fiber guide, a step stool, and a blowpipe. After receiving all of those lovely gifts, I attempt to parkour my way out of this pit that I'm stuck in, and yeah. With that embarrassing death, I decide it's time to start making a base. I go ahead and grab some rope and head up to the skies to build a bunch of NPC houses as well as a small crafting and storage area on the roof. Heading over to the jungle, I go down to this cave where I find a wooden chest that gives us an umbrella, which is actually considered a sword in the Terraria wiki. Shortly after, I find a shrine with an anklet of the wind and our first life crystal before I dig down this hole, getting myself killed by these hornets because I'm stupid, I guess. I craft a platinum broadsword and then I start throwing bombs below our base to make a giant elevator. After a bit of elevating, I get a gravitation potion and start looking for some sky islands. First one I find, I get a shiny red balloon, and the second one I find the biggest upgrade yet, the Star Fury. Back in the jungle, I find another shrine and get lucky enough to find a set of feral claws. Continuing our spelunking, I find a golden chest that supplies us with an extractinator, and shortly after, another one that gives us a cloud in a bottle. I headed into the underground desert and found this bass statue in a random sand chest. With all of my upgrades, I decided it's time to start taking on bosses, so I start flattening out an area of land and building a small arena with platforms. I place down the sharpening station and the bass statues as well as a bunch of campfires, and I get ready to fight the Eye of Cthulhu. I summon the boss, and I use the stars from the Star Fury for most of this fight, as it's a little dangerous to get super close to the eye, especially in that second phase. Takes a little bit longer than normal, but the fight isn't hard, and we take out the Eye of Cthulhu and our first boss. I decide to go ahead and use the Demonite to craft the Knight's Bane, one of the major ingredients in our best sword of Pre-Hardmode. One quick trip to the jungle later, and I have enough materials to craft the next sword, the Blade of Grass. I decide I want to take on the Eater of Worlds with my new sword, and I go down to the corruption to throw some bombs. I have a platform above ground to try and make this fight a little bit easier, but in reality I think it makes it a lot harder, and with all the blasts of the Eater hitting me, I definitely don't win on this attempt. I go for a second attempt trying to use the Star Fury, still above ground with another set of platforms, but as before, it's just too much damage and I end up dead. This time I try and go for the underground, but my arena is a little too small, and I get caught with about 5 Eater of Worlds segments, which all just ram into me, killing me instantly. The next day, the goblin army spawns. I use the Blade of Grass with its gigantic size and projectiles to quickly deal with the goblins, and then head down my elevator to look for the goblin, getting myself killed because I take fall damage. Luckily, while free mining in the jungle, I do run into the goblin tinkerer in this small little alcove. Back down in the corruption, I widen my arena, and I get ready to fight the Eater of Worlds once more. With the bigger arena, and mainly using the Star Fury this time, I actually do manage to take him out on this attempt. Using the materials from the boss, I go ahead and make a nightmare pickaxe, as well as 2 pieces of the shadow armor for some minor stat boosts. I expand some houses, and then the traveling merchant arrives where I can get the drip for this playthrough, as well as a lifeform analyzer. I only have enough money for the tinker's workshop, so I go ahead and grab it and make myself a cloud in the balloon just to free up a slot. Using the potions before, I find another life crystal, as well as an ice blade to add to the collection. A few more chests, I find a blizzard in a bottle, and a pair of ice skates. After some success mining, I head down to hell and mine some hellstone to get my final armor upgrade of Pre-Hardmode. I make the hellstone bars, and I craft the full molten set, as well as the volcano sword and the molten pickaxe. Next up is Skeletron. I set up a small arena with no buffs, and I get ready to fight him. Once I start the curse, I'm mainly using the stars from the Star Fury to try and hit the hands, and it takes a little while, but eventually I end up getting stuck in the terrain, and the skeleton just wipes me out. While looking for the shimmer, my stars reveal this small little path, which I think might lead to a nice little cave for some life crystals, but even luckier, it leads us to an enchanted shrine that gives us an enchanted sword. I never find these things. This was super cool to find, especially on a swords only playthrough. I decided to build 2 houses in the desert to start setting up a pylon network and blowing up the ground, landing right next to our shimmer, where I make another house for easy access to the pool. And now again, it's time to face Skeletron. This time I'm using a mixture of the Star Fury and the volcano, using the Star Fury when he's far away and the volcano to hit him when he's up close next to me. This strategy ends up working pretty well. The volcano does a ton of damage, especially if you can just consistently get hits in. And with enough time and some cleared out terrain, we take out Skeletron, allowing us to enter the dungeon. Our first chest supplies us with a cobalt shield, and we're only looking for one more item down here, so let's hope we can find it quickly. It took us a little bit, but eventually we do find the Muramasa, and we can finally proceed with our next major upgrade. Grabbing all the ingredients out of our swords chest, I go down to the Corruption and make the Knight's Edge, one of the best swords in pre-hard mode, and it can even last us a decent amount into hard mode itself. With the Knight's Edge in hand, I'm immediately ready to fight the Wall of Flesh. I buff up and throw the Voodoo Doll in, and the Knight's Edge has this super wide circle arc, so I can easily hit multiple pieces at once and take out the Hungries, and it's no problem. Melee is actually super easy when it comes to the Wall of Flesh, and especially once we get into hard mode, will be easy for pretty much the rest of the game. We get a Ranger emblem from the bag, but we go ahead and pop that Demon Heart and we'll get our Warrior emblem later. We go break our altars, getting ourselves some Cobalt or Calcum and Adamantite, and of course we mine some Cobalt, make a pickaxe, mine some more Calcum, make an anvil and a pickaxe, mine a whole bunch of Adamantite, and go and make a full Adamantite armor set. Deciding to switch it up for this playthrough, I go and grind some Wyverns for some Souls of Flight, and then I head over to the Snow Biome to farm some Ice Golems for an Ice Feather, and our first set of wings is acquired. Heading to the Shimmer, I notice a Mimic off screen, and I go to take it out, and luckily it drops us the Titan Glove first try. This saves a lot of grinding, and we can go ahead and make the Power Glove to replace our Feral Claws. I grind for some Souls of Night in the Corruption, and I make a Mechanical Worm to try and take on our first mech boss. Once night hits with my legendary Knight's Edge, I buff up and I go to take on the Destroyer. Now for some reason the Destroyer fight's usually pretty tough, but in melee I have so much defense and just raw damage output with how many times I can hit the Destroyer that this first attempt was basically nothing. The probes died to my stray swings and the Destroyer fell easily. I used the Hallowed Bars to make an Excalibur before heading down to Hell to grind for a Magma Stone, which we used to upgrade to the Fire Gauntlet later in the playthrough. Once nighttime, I decided to take on Skeletron Prime. I used the Excalibur for almost all of this fight, mainly focusing on the skull and hitting the arms whenever they got in my way. Skeletron Prime continues the trend of being the easiest mech boss for me for some reason, and I take him out almost no problems. While editing, I noticed a gold worm over in the corner, and the next night we go to fight the twins. This fight was actually a little bit tough because they like to keep their distance from you a lot, so I use the Excalibur for the higher damage and only attack when they're dashing towards me. I focus on dodging any other time, and we get Spasmicism down to phase 2 where his flame almost takes me out real quick. I get a lucky nurse heal in, and with enough distance and careful swings we take out Spasmicism's second phase, only leaving Retinizer, who's not tough either, but because he likes to stay away from you, it makes the fight last forever and I barely finish it in time, but we do get it done. With all 3 mech bosses down, I go ahead and make the True Knight's Edge one of the best weapon upgrades in the game, and I use this weapon a whole lot. I make the Destroyer emblem, combining it with my Power Glove to make the Mechanical Glove, and then shortly after, the Fire Gauntlet. I head over to the jungle mining a bunch of Chlorophyte and taking out any turtles I see to get their elusive shells. Eventually though, I make it home and craft a full turtle armor set as well as the true Excalibur. I bomb out a giant area above the jungle temple and build a massive arena to fight Plantera. I use the handmade Plantera summoner that's a part of my mod to start the fight and take on the queen herself. In Plantera's first phase, I switch actively between the True Knight's Edge and the Excalibur just because I'm not sure which is better and I miss a lot with the range shots. I continue this in the second phase where I use Excalibur to deal with all of the arms and the True Knight's Edge to finish off the fight. I immediately head to the jungle temple to take on Golem, and this fight has still been pretty tough for me in extra mode for some reason, but luckily thanks to the True Knight's Edge we take out Golem first try. Don't look at my next attempts though. After Golem, I go ahead and make a full Beetle armor set and use the Solar Tablets to start the Solar Eclipse. Our swords keep the enemies back super easily, and I focus on staying alive until a Mothron spawns. Eventually one does, but unfortunately for us, this one only drops the Eye of Cthulhu. Shortly after, a second one spawns, and this one does drop us the Broken Hero Sword. Wasting no time, I craft our final sword, the Terra Blade. The first time I've used the reworked Terra Blade, but it's super awesome, it deals a lot of damage, super fun to just mow through tons of enemies with. I grind a whole bunch of golems to get a Sunstone to combine with the Moonstone we got during the Solar Eclipse. I take on both Queen Bee and Plantera again to get a couple missing swords, the Beekeeper and the Seedler. Next, I focused on the Pumpkin Moon where my drops were kind of iffy, but right before the night ended, this pumpkin dropped us the Horseman's Blade. Even though I have the Witch's Broom from the event, I go ahead and make some Spooky Wings for a nice upgrade. I quickly wanted to take on the Martian Madness event so I could get the Influx waiver from the Martian Saucers. Time to start wrapping up, so we head over to the dungeon to start the fight with the Lunatic Cultist. With the strength of the Terra Blade and its ranged projectile, we easily take out the Lunatic Cultist, not spawning a single dragon and not dying once. The Solar Pillar spawns right on top of me, so I immediately focus on taking it down, and for once in my life, I take down the Solar Pillar without dying a single time. I abuse these Stardust Cells to quickly take down the Pillar shield, and very shortly after, the Pillar itself. Vortex Pillar is always easy, you just cheese it with a hole in the ground and it's over. I get my buffs ready before taking on the Nebula Pillar, finishing it as Impending Doom approaches and the Moonlord spawns. As always, first try against the Moonlord, and that wraps up Terraria Swords Only. This challenge was super fun, and I just loved feeling powerful by the end. Swords are so good right now in Terraria, and it's crazy. The next playthrough is already in the works, and it shouldn't be too long of a wait between this one and that one. Thank you for watching. Love you guys. Bye. But wait, am I forgetting a sword?